Welcome back! A long time no see. I am Annabelle from emptyingguliversbucket, and today we are doing a reading wrap-up and book haul for the month of November. So, I have been gone forever and a day because the technical difficulties with the previous videos got to me. So I kind of gave up for a little while, but my sister talked me into it again and we're back to give it another try. So today I am doing a reading wrap up as well as a book haul for the month of November, because personally I am not a fan of just book hauls, especially if they like pile up and up and up and up and then you've got like 60 books. I enjoy watching them, but I don't think I'd enjoy making them. So I'm trying to like combine the two and have one where I talk about the books that I've read in a month, as well as show you the books that I accumulated throughout that month. Now, the month of November here in Scotland was quite dark and dreary, so to cheer myself up, I bought many books, or found many books, because the sun sets at 4, and then I have Facebook and Facebook groups to go through. So that was quite fun, and because of that I have 3 different categories for today. I divided my books into 3 categories. I did, well, 4, counting if you count the red books as a separate category. So I've got new books that I either bought in store, and then one that I got from Amazon when I like ordered my tripod, because, you know, treat yourself. Then the other one, which I call my Facebook finds, which is where I find books secondhand on Facebook in Facebook groups, but I'll explain a bit more about that when we get there. And then the last one is my secondhand bookstore like books. So these are the books that I find in thrift stores and charity stores, because there's quite a few of them here in my area, as well as just your typical secondhand bookstores. So, without further ado, first we have our new books, because I think that's quite a cool place to start. And the first one we have is the one that I got off Amazon, which is The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle Jensen, or Danielle L. Jensen, and it's quite a bit smaller than I thought. But what I really do love is the fact that it has like little pictures at the beginning of the chapters, which I just adore. And this one is about Lara has only one thought for her husband on their wedding day: I will bring your kingdom to its knees. A princess trained from childhood to be a lethal spy, Lara knows that the Bridge Kingdom represents both legendary evil and legendary promise. The only route through a storm-ravaged world, the Bridge Kingdom controls all trade and travel between lands, allowing its ruler to enrich himself and deprive his enemies, including Lara's homeland. So when she ascends as bride under the guise of fulfilling a treaty of peace, Lara is prepared to do whatever it takes to fracture the defenses of the impenetrable Bridge Kingdom. It is a fantasy romance, pretty much, with a hint of adventure, typical trope of enemies to lovers, which is one of my personal favorites, and it's the first in a series, which I only realized after I got the book, because the publishers did well and actually wrote the Bridge Kingdom series book 1 on the spine, which is always very nice of them to do. But yeah, so I'm really excited about this one. Then we have Skin of the Sea by Natasha Bowen. And it's good to mention that the next few that I'm doing comes from Waterstones, because I had a job interview, I'd finished my classes and my work for the day, and I just was in the area of where the interview was. So I was kind of like, let's just waste some time in the bookstore. Big mistake, you know? But in any case, this one was on my list of one to read, because I saw it on NetGalley as a book coming out soon, and I just thought it was a spectacular cover, especially with the water and the like gilded font, and then like our main lady is also just this regal, beautiful woman. The catchphrase is, when you peel back the skin of the sea, you never know what you might find. Simidele is one of the Mamiwata, mermaids who collect the souls of those who die at sea and bless their journeys home. But when a boy is thrown overboard a ship of enslaved people, Simi saves his life. going against an ancient decree and bringing terrible danger to the Mamiwata. Now, Simi must journey to the Supreme Creator to make amends, a journey of vengeful gods in treacherous lands. If she fails, she risks not just the fate of the Mamiwata and the boy she loves, but also the world as she knows it. This is a story that will change history. And I love books with mermaids. There's really not enough books with mermaids. Like in fantasy genre, you've got a lot of like fairies and elves and stuff like that, but not enough mermaids, is my personal opinion. And I really enjoy the fact that this is not your typical Little Mermaid retelling mermaid story, but an actual world building around mermaids, which is quite cool. Then I also got Gilded by Marissa, which is one of my personal favorite authors, even though I've like only read one of her books or a few of her books. But this one, I noticed it was signed. Like, I think that brought me immense inner pleasure, like childlike joy. And this is pretty much a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, where the princess that has to spin gold was not forced into the situation by her father lying. She is cursed by the god of lies. And so it says, cursed by the god of lies, a miller's daughter has developed a talent for storytelling, but are all of her tales as false as they appear? So this is a bit of a love wasn't meant to be part of the bargain Rumpelstiltskin retelling. Instead of the prince being the one to save the girl, maybe she falls in love with Rumpelstiltskin. And I just really enjoy Marissa Mayer's writing style and her retelling of like fairy tales, because she also did Heartless, which was a retelling of the Queen of Hearts, which I subbed at in the end. Spoiler. So then we have The Devil Makes Three by Tori Valena. I think I butchered that. And the cover looks a lot scarier than I think it should, but whatever. So this one says, the devil seeks his due from two unsuspecting students. When Tess and Elliot stumble upon an ancient book hidden in a secret tunnel beneath their school library, they accidentally release a devil from his book-bound prison. And he'll stop at nothing to stay free. He'll manipulate all the ink in the library books to do his bidding. He'll murder in the stacks, and he'll bleed into every inch of Tess's life until his freedom is permanent. Forced to work together, Tess and Elliot have to find a way to re-trap the devil before he kills everyone they know and love, including increasingly each other. And compared to what the devil has in store for them, school stress suddenly doesn't seem so bad after all. So like a young adult bit of a adventure with a quest to like recapture the devil, you know, and it quite reminded me of The Library of the Unwritten by A.J. Hackworth, which I absolutely adored. I still need to read the second one, and I think the third one is coming out next year, coming out next year. And I just really love anything that has to do with books and libraries. It's set in a library, or the books can speak, or the books are just present, or the main character really loves reading and loves books. It's just, it speaks to me, you know. So that's quite cool. So this one has books in it and like a devil that, you know, is trying to kill everyone they love. Then we have Mordu, which is quite a chunky, quite a chunky 500-600 page book with a beautiful colour, and it's by Alex Phoebe. And look, it has a little rat. A tiny little rat at the bottom, if you can focus on it, but it isn't. But that's fine. So this is about God is dead, his corpse hidden in the catacombs beneath Mordu. In the slums of the sea-battered city, a young boy called Nathan Treves lives with his parents, eking out a meagre existence by picking treasures from the living mud and the half-formed, short-lived creatures it spawns. Until one day, his desperate mother sells him to the mysterious master of Mordu. The master derives his magical power from feeding on the corpse of God, but Nathan, despite his fear and lowly station, has his own strength, and it is greater than the master has ever known, great enough to destroy everything the master has built, if only Nathan can discover how to use it. So it is that the master begins to scheme against him, and Nathan has to fight his way through the betrayals, secrets, and vendettas of the city where God was murdered and darkness reigns. So it just sounds like this amazingly complicated, darkish fantasy with quite a young protagonist, which I always enjoy. And yeah, it's just a nice chunky one. I think it's the first in a series, so will be fun to dive into that and just see and stay with it as the series like continues. Then we have the ladies of the Secret Circus with a really pretty cover with like the ladies trapezing there in gold foiling. And this is by Constance Sayers, who also wrote A Witch in Time. And this is the surest way to get a ticket to Le Cirque Secret is to wish for it. Paris, 1925. To enter the Secret Circus is to enter a world of wonder, a world where women weave illusions. Carousels take you back in time and trapeze artists float across the sky. Bound to her family's circus, it's the only world Cecile Cabot knows until she meets a charismatic young painter and embarks on a passionate love affair that could cost her everything. Virginia, 2004. When Laura Barnes' fiancé disappears on their wedding day, every plan she has for the future comes crashing down. Desperate for answers, Laura's search unexpectedly leads her to her great-grandmother's lost journals. Swept into a story of a dark circus and ill-fated love, secrets about Lara's family history come to light and reveal a curse that has been claiming payment from the woman in her family for generations. A curse that might be tied to her fiancé's mysterious fate. Just the circus setting and the fact that it's like wishes with a hint of magic has me thinking about The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, which is one of my favourite books. So just because of that, I was like, definitely have to read it. And I'm a sucker for a standalone that has the whole story from start to finish encompassed in one novel and one easily digestible like piece. That, and I mean, come on, the cover, just the cover with the sun streaks and just everything about the cover. So that was my Waterstones little pile. After that, I went to the university's bookstore to get like a few study materials, highlighters and stuff like that. And then I saw this Sister Song, which is also such a pretty cover by Lucy Holland, and it's got shiny bits and a nice cover. And underneath, what does it have underneath? Let's see. Nothing, it's just a plain blue book. But this is about betrayal, magic, murder, a tale of 3 siblings and their 3 deadly sins. King Cardor's children inherit a land abandoned by the Romans, torn by warring tribes. Riva can cure others, but can't heal her own scars. Kane battles to be seen as the king's son, although born a daughter, and Sin dreams of love, longing for adventure. All 3 fear a life of confinement within the walls of the hold, the people's last bastion of strength against the invading Saxons. However, change comes on the day ash falls from the sky, bringing Merlin, Medland magician. The siblings discover the power that lies within them and their land, but fate also brings Tristan, a warrior whose secrets will tear them apart. River, Kane, and Sin becomes entangled in a web of treachery and heartbreak and must fight to forge their own paths. It's a story that will shape the destiny of Britain. So, this is the powerful narrative reimagines The Two Sisters, which is an old British folk song, and it's like a story that I haven't come into contact a lot, like the British ballad or the old British song. And I saw this in a bookstore that I worked in South Africa, and it's been on my list to get since then, because I was like, this sounds like such a fascinating retelling and a bit darker and a historical period that you don't see quite often, which is always lovely to see, or always interesting to visit. It also reminds me a bit of the Queens of Innisleah with the 3 sister thing, but I don't think it's the same because that's a complete high fantasy and this is like a retelling in a historical setting with a bit of magic and a bit of a folktale element, which is always good. And then obviously like the cover is just beautiful. Then, lastly on our new pile, we have The Last Act of Adam Campbell by Andy Jones, which is this, which has a cute little cover with lemons, because you know, when life gives you lemons. So, a year can go quickly, particularly when it is your last. Adam had it all, a great job, a gorgeous house, and a loving family. Then he cheated on his partner, then she kicked him out, and then he was given 12 months to live. Despite the devastating news, Adam is determined to turn his life around before it finally runs out. Help comes in the form of an ex-junkie, a cantankerous train driver, a nun experiencing a crisis of faith, and a teenager intent on losing her virginity, or living on borrowed time, all desperate to feel alive before their time is up. So Adam Campbell, after being a cheating person, gets kicked out of his house and then finds out he has cancer. And in the last 12 months of his life, time becomes quite a bit of a heavy concept for him. I read the first 2 pages. And with that, he meets a few people, and this is a last chance at life kind of story. So a bit of a feel good, a bit of sad, because you know, chances are he might die in the end. But I just thought it would maybe be a nice feel good, just generally nice, good story just to curl up with next to the fire, or next in bed, because we don't have a fireplace, but just to curl up with in bed on like a winter morning or something like that. And that is my book pile for new books. So as mentioned before, I have quite a few thrift stores and charity stores in my area, especially in the area of the university. So I pass them when I like walk back from university, or if I go buy groceries or something like that, which means that the temptation to just pop in and, you know, browse is, it's a genuine problem. Because that is my one habitual thing of, oh, there's a bookstore, let me just browse quickly. I'll just pop in and see if there's anything interesting. And I have a running list on my Goodreads, which is one to read, and that is generally where I like keep the lists of books that I want to buy, not necessarily that are on my physical TBR, but books that I want to buy or want to purchase or find somewhere. And I've been lucky enough to find quite a few of them in secondhand bookstores, and then even more in the Facebook groups, but we'll get to that still. So firstly, we have The Crimson Petal and the White, which is by Mitchell Faber. And this one, oddly enough, I saw in the bookstore when I bought the other books, and I was like, oh, let me just add that to my list. I'll come collect it, or I'll come buy it at another point, or I'll come back to it. And then the next day I just popped into a bookstore and I found it. I was like, it was meant to be. It is fate. So this is about Sugar, an alluring 19-year-old prostitute in the brothel of the peculiar Mrs. Castaway. She yearns for a better life, and when she is visited by William Rackham, the somewhat reluctant heir to Rackham Perfumeries, she begins an ascent through the strata of 1870s London society that offers us intimacy with a host of lovable, maddening, and superbly realised characters. Gripping from the first page, this hugely acclaimed novel is an intoxicating and deeply satisfying read. Not only a wonderful story, but the creation of an entire extraordinary world. And once again, an era and time that I enjoy visiting, because it's a bit darker, less flamboyant than the like golden era, Elizabethan era. So this is Edwardian era London, and it's gritty and it's dark, and it follows a prostitute who does not live a glamorous life. So I find that quite interesting. Then the other thing is, it's like that thick paper, which I also find quite satisfying. But yeah, it sounds like an interesting read, and it's an interesting point of view, and it reminds me of An Almond for a Parrot, which is one of my personal favourite breeds that was recommended by my sister, and it's probably her favourite book of all time. So of course, anything that reminds me of it I have to read. Then I went to a little bookstore, a little secondhand bookstore called Voltaire and Rousseau, which is very well known in Glasgow, and I found 2 books there. The first one is When All Is Said by Anne Griffin, and I got another book, her latest book, which is Still Listening, from someone on Facebook. And in the messaging while we were like organizing the payments and stuff, she said, well, if you find When All Is Said, I really recommend it because I absolutely adored it. And then lo and behold, I found it in a secondhand bookstore in that week that we talked about it, and I was like, you know, it's fate. This is at the bar of a Grand Hotel in a small Irish town sits 84-year-old Maurice Hannigan. He's alone as usual, though tonight is anything but. Pull up a stool and charge your glass, because Maurice is finally ready to tell his story. Over the course of this evening, he will raise 5 toasts to the 5 people who have meant the most to him. Through these stories of unspoken joy and regret, a secret tragedy kept hidden, a fierce love that never found its voice, the life of one man will be powerfully and poignantly laid bare. Heartbreaking and heartwarming all at once, the voice of Maurice Hannigan will stay with you long after all is said. So it reminds me of a specific book. I just can't remember it now. Okay, I'll just find it and then insert this. Then also in that same bookstore I found The Famished Road by Ben Oakley, which was quite cool, and it is Azara is a spirit child who is born only to live for a short while before returning to the idyllic world of his spirit companions. Now he has chosen to stay in the world of the living. This is his story. So honestly, I don't know much about it. Like, I just read that little bit and it just, I don't know, it just called out to me. So I decided to get it, and it's a well-loved copy, which is also quite appealing. Like, it's got the yellow edges and it's got the nice bent spine, which means that somebody enjoyed this and loved it for a little while. So I think that also added to why I wanted to read it. And this is the winner of a Booker Prize. So we'll see. But yeah, just the idea of a little child and their story. Then we have the Book of Lost Names, which has been on my list for quite some time, and it is by Kristen Harmel. And in 1942, Eva is forced to flee Paris after the arrest of her Jewish father. Finding refuge in a small mountain town, she begins forging identity documents for Jewish children, escaping to neutral Switzerland. But erasing people comes with a price, and along with Remy, a mysterious forger, Eva realizes she must find a way to preserve the identities of those too young to remember. When Remy disappears and the resistance cell they work for is betrayed, the records they keep become even more crucial to remembering the truth. Decades later, the book is recovered, leaving researchers desperate to decipher its codes. Only Eva holds the answers, but will she have the strength to face old memories and help reunite those lost during the war? Like, I just got goosebumps reading this back again, and it sounds like a different take on World War II, because for some reason, I'm just really drawn to World War II novels or World War I novels or any novel set in that area of like great despair. But it's not going to be a very long read, but it just sounds really heartwarming and very sad, but also beautiful. And just the premise of the book is quite beautiful. So that's why I picked this and why it has been on my list for so long. Then we have The Stray Cats of Homs. And this one also sounds quite sad, but I found the following two in the Oxfam bookstore, which is, I don't know how you've made it this far. Sammy's childhood is much like any other. School with his friends, dinners with his family, playing with his pets, stray cats and dogs, and the turtle he keeps on the roof. But with Surrey at war with itself, nothing is really normal, and Sammy's hopes for a better future are about to be ripped away. Inspired by extraordinary true events, The Stray Cats of Homs is the breathtaking story of a young man who will do anything to keep the dream of home alive. You know, so it's just Eva Noor wrote this, and it's a different setting to what you normally find with war and stuff like that, and anything with little animals and children trying to like keep their dreams alive and just preserve that which is home really hits hard. So of course, another sad book. Then we have The English Patient by Michael Underkey, which is the movie cover, and I watched the movie quite a few years ago, and like I really enjoyed it and I really liked it. So then I vowed that if ever I find the book in a second-hand edition or like just second-hand, that I would immediately get it. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's about, you know, a patient, an English man, falls, World War II, looked after, love, romance, betrayal, you know, all that, which is just fun. But it is a Booker Prize winning novel, and I am just excited to read the book version of it and then rewatch the movie, because yeah, I really enjoyed the movie as well. It's beautiful. And that was my second-hand pile. So I call these my Facebook finds, because when I arrived here in Glasgow, I don't know how I found it, but I found out that there's quite a few book groups here in the UK in general, as well as Glasgow specifically, and it's book groups that are book swapping and book selling. So what happens is, if you've got a secondhand books that you don't want to keep in your house anymore, or if you've got books that you read but didn't love and you'd like to swap it for another book, you just post it on these groups, and then someone replies with saying, oh, I'd really like that book, and then you buy it from them and they post it to you and you get the book like 3 days, 4 days afterwards, which is amazing because in South Africa the post does not work like that. But yes, and or you can swap a book. So for example, last month I swapped one of the books that I read in September for a book which was called Dancing at the Pity Party, which I absolutely adored. But yeah, so you can like swap books if you don't like the one that you have and you'd rather want another one, or you can just buy the secondhand books from the people or from normal people that were clearing out their houses, which means that you get books for the fraction of their prices. They're normally in great condition, and then you also get to meet people that had the similar reading taste as you do. Like a few of these I got from the same bookseller, and it's the second time that I got books from her, and we've been chatting about like the books that we enjoy and stuff like that, which is quite cool. So you meet new people, get new books, and I am able to like whittle down that long Goodreads want to read list of mine. So without further ado, let's start with the first one. So I have Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid, who is the author of Daisy Jones and the Six, as well as The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I haven't read yet, but I have read Daisy Jones and the Six and I absolutely adored it. Like, I really loved it so much. So I'm pretty much wanting to just read everything that she writes or publishes, because I enjoy her writing style and enjoy the creativity she puts into it, and I especially enjoy the historic periods that she puts it in. It's not like your typical 1600s, 1800s, it's like the 80s or the 70s or something like that. So this one is Malibu August 1983. It's the day of Nina Riva's annual end of summer party, and anticipation is at a fever pitch. Everyone who's anyone wants an invite to catch a glimpse of the famous Riva siblings. Nina, the talented surfer and supermodel, brothers Jay and Hud, one a championship surfer, the other a renowned photographer, and their adored baby sister, Kit. Together the siblings are a source of fascination in Malibu and the world, especially as the children of the legendary singer Mick Riva. By midnight the party will be completely out of control. By morning the Riva mansion will have gone up in flames. But ahead of that first spark in the early hours before dawn, the alcohol will flow, the music will play, and the loves and secrets that shaped this family will all come bubbling to the surface. The Malibu Rising is the story of one unforgettable night in the life of a family, the night when they each have to choose what they will keep from the people who made them and what they will leave behind. So this is a bit of a dramatic 24-hour period, which I also enjoy, that it doesn't like span over days and days and days. So it's an interesting take on what happens over 24 hours, secrets, family, drama, and it's 1983. So, you know, 80s, rocking it, whatever. And I'm just really interested in it, and I want to read it because I enjoyed her other books. Then we have The First Woman, which hasn't even been read. And this unfortunately has one of these flappy things, which honestly I really dislike. But in any case, this is the winner of the Jalaka Prize 2021 and written by Jennifer Nansubuga Makumbi. So this is about, at once an epic and deeply personal, the second novel from prize-winning author Jennifer Makumbi is an intoxicating mix of Ugandan folklore and modern feminism that will linger in the memory long after the final page. As Karabo enters her teens, questions begin to gnaw at her, questions which the adults in her life will do anything to ignore. Where is the mother she has never known? And why would she choose to leave her daughter behind? Inquisitive, headstrong, and unwilling to take no for an answer, Karabo sets out to find the truth for herself. Her search will take her away from the safety of her prosperous Ugandan family, plunging her into a very different world of magic, tradition, and haunting legend of the First Woman. I absolutely adore it when books incorporate folklore from another country, because suddenly I hear about different stories than your typical folk tales that we know about, you know, your typical Cinderella and whatever like that, which just means that I'm able to explore different parts of the world and stories from those parts of the world on a different level. And then also the fact that there's a little bit of magical realism in this really appeals to me. Then the next two books I got together, they're the first and second book in a quartet, and they're a bit spicy, which is always fun. So it is Pestilence and War by Laura the Lassa, which is the first and second book in the Four Horsemen, and as I said, a little bit spicy. So they each follow one of the Four Horsemen. So you've got Pestilence, War, Death, and what's the other one? Why can't I remember? So each follows them in a different setting, and it's a romance and fantasy, and I'm not going to go into it any more than that, because what more do you want? You know, this one takes place in modern day, this one takes place in Jerusalem when it falls, and it's just pretty much fantasy romances. What more do you need? After that we have Leila by Colleen Hoover, and it says, love can haunt or heal. When Leeds meets Leila, he's convinced he'll spend the rest of his life with her, until an unexpected attack leaves Leila fighting for her life. After weeks in the hospital, Leila recovers physically, but the emotional and mental scarring has altered the woman Leeds fell in love with. In order to put the relationship back on track, Leeds whisks Leila away to the bed and breakfast where they first met. Once they arrive, Leila's behaviour takes a bizarre turn, and that's just one of many inexplicable occurrences. Feeling distance from Leila, Leeds soon finds solace in Willow, another guest of the B&B, with whom he forms a connection through their shared concerns. As his curiosity for Willow grows, his decision to help her find answers puts him in direct conflict with Leila's well-being. Leeds soon realizes he has to make a choice because he can't help both of them, but if he makes the wrong choice, it could be detrimental for all of them. So it seems like a bit of a psychological thriller, a little bit of a healing thing, and I've just heard good things from Colleen Hoover and everyone seems to love it, so why not? The next three I got from the same lady, and it was the one that I told you about, who I just had nice chats with. And the first one is Never Let Me Go by Kazua Ishigura, and this is one of the most acclaimed and original novels of recent years. Kazua Ishigura imagines the lives of a group of students growing up in a darkly skewed version of contemporary England. Narrated by Kathy, now 31, Never Let Me Go hauntingly dramatizes her attempts to come to terms with her childhood at the seemingly idyllic Hailsham school, and with a fate that has always awaited her and her closest friends in the wider world. A story of love, friendship, and memory. Never Let Me Go is charged throughout with a sense of the fragility of life. I do think this is also turned into a movie, which has Keira Knightley in it and stuff like that. I'm not sure if it's about the same thing, but I've just always wanted to read Kazua Ishiguro or a lot of his books, and I found one secondhand, so why not give this a try and this be my first one of his to read. Then I got The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary, which is about two people sharing a flat. The daytime is for the man in this agreement because he works night shifts, and the nighttime is for Tiffy as she works the day shift. So they share the same space, they've never met. This is a recipe for disaster and for love and for fun and miscommunication, and that is pretty much all you need to know. And it's got the typical rom-com cover, which is like the bold colors and the blocky imagery. Then we have Small Island by Andrea Levy, and it's 1948 and England is recovering from a war. But at 21 Nevern Street, London, the conflict has only just begun. Queenie Bligh's neighbours don't approve when she agrees to take in Jamaican lodgers, but Queenie doesn't know when or even if her husband will return. What else can she do? Gilbert Joseph was one of the many Jamaican men who joined the RAF to fight Hitler, but when he returns to England as a civilian, he doesn't receive the welcome he was expecting, and it's desperation that drives him to knock at Queenie's door. Gilbert's wife, Hortense, who for years has longed for a better life in England, soon joins him, but London is far from the golden city of her dreams, and even Gilbert is not the man she thought he was. So this is a bit of a dramatic family cultural story about what happens when the war is over, but people are trying to gather themselves together and piece themselves back to the people that they once were. And I just like books like this, you know, books that are a bit more than just a love story or just a story about war, books that look at the people behind it, you know, and how life affects everyone. Then we've got The Two Lives of Lydia Bird by Josie Silver, and this is one of the books that I have read this month, so that is part of the wrap-up, and I enjoyed it. I really liked it. It's about Lydia Bird, who was engaged to get married to her childhood sweetheart and the love of her life, and then he dies on her birthday. And this is about this follows the 2 years afterwards in which she recovers, and she takes sleeping pills that when she sleeps after taking them, she visits him in another life, and that is the second life that she leads. So she leads a waking one, and then the one in which he hasn't died and she still has him. And the lines get blurred and miscommunication takes place, and this is just about her going through grief, finding love maybe, potentially not, and just going through the motions of daily life after loss. And I enjoyed it, I really did. It was like a 3.5, maybe a 4-star read. At one point I was really pissed off with the character, but that just made her more real, so there is that. And I really enjoyed the fact that it looked at grief and losing someone that's been part of your life for more than a decade, and very seriously, you know, and honestly. So I did enjoy it and I would recommend it, but go into it without thinking that this is a love story, because it is, but it isn't. So it is decidedly a romance, but it is decidedly not a romance, which also might have thrown me off a bit in the sense that I was expecting one thing and I didn't get what I was expecting. Then we have Out of Touch, which is a beautiful hardback copy, and it's by Haley Ager, and this one I also saw in exclusive books back in South Africa and added it to my reading list because a man hit Ava with his car a few miles from her bungalow. He brings her flowers in hospital and offers to do her laundry. He also brings her the letter she dropped that night on the road. In New York, Ava's brother Michael receives the same letter. He thinks about it as he steps out of the shower into his curtainless bedroom. A naked woman stares at him from the apartment across. They both laugh and cover up with their arms. Brother and sister cannot avoid the letter. Their estranged father is dying and wants to meet. Can they forgive the father and face each other after all these years apart? Will new unexpected friends offer the advice and comfort they need? With sharp wits and sensitivity, Out of Touch is a deeply absorbing story about love and vulnerability, sex and power, and the unbreakable bonds of family. And this looks like a family saga that touches on the things of what makes family life difficult, as opposed to all the sunshine and rainbows that we sometimes see in family novels. And I just found the cover really appealing as well, which is cute. It seems wise and pretty and well written, and here Rowan Hisayo Buchanan says, raw and hopeful, this book is about what pulls us apart and what keeps us together. So pretty much why I picked it up. Then I got the first and the second one in this duology, which is Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan, and I quite like the cover with the stuff. So I'll just read the synopsis for the first one so that the second one isn't spoiled. So it says, a girl who can speak to gods must save her people without destroying herself. A prince in danger must decide whom to trust. A boy with a monstrous secret waits in the wings. Together they must assassinate the king and stop the war. In a centuries-long war, where beauty and brutality meet, their three paths entwine in a shadowy world of spilled blood and mysterious saints, where a forbidden romance threatens to tip the scales between dark and light. Wicked Saints is the devastatingly gothic start to Emily A. Duncan's thrilling something dark and holy trilogy. It's not a duology, it's a trilogy. So I got the first two, and then the third one, if I enjoy the first two, I'll get the third one as well. If not, maybe I'll just swap them. Then last in my Facebook finds pile, I have Love Letters to the Dead and by Ava DeLeira, and this is a young adult coming of age story. So this is about sometimes the best letters go unanswered. It begins as an assignment for English class. Write a letter to a dead person. Laurel chooses Kurt Cobain. He died young and so did Laurel's sister May. so maybe he'll understand what Laurel is going through. Soon Laurel is writing letters to lots of dead people. Janis Joplin, Heath Ledger, River Phoenix, Amelia Earhart, Amy Winehouse. It's all like she can't stop. She writes about her new high school, her new friends, her first love, and her shattered life. But the ghosts of Laurel's past can't be contained between the lines of her page forever. She must face up to them before they consume her. And this is just pretty much about dealing with grief in a new setting, and I find that, and it is written in letters, which I always find fascinating. It's an epistolic novel, which I always enjoy. And those are all the books that I accumulated this month. Now I will go into the books that I have read, as well as The Two Lives of Lydia Bird, and discuss them a bit. So let's do it. So, as already mentioned, I read The Two Lives of Lydia Bird and really liked it. Then I read Folk by Zoe Gilbert, which I talked about in my previous video, or my first video, and I just adore the cover. Like, I really, really love it. And I loved this book. I absolutely adored it. It's like a folk tale that is spun into novel length, or multiple folk tales interweaving to become this tale of this one generation as they grow up and grow old, because each chapter follows a different character, and as you go through the book you see how they interweave, how they know each other, and the one character mentioned in one chapter, the story might follow them in a later one, or they might be mentioned again. And it's all these dark and twisty kind of stories which end and start in a folk tale sense, or as a fairy tale. So for example, it will start on a dark and stormy night, and then things will happen to this character and it will end, as if each chapter is a single story on its own. And I loved how the writing was also quite folk tale-esque. So it was written in the manner that a folk tale would be told. It wasn't written as a novel with serious feelings or like a lot of internal thought from the characters. It was almost in a third person perspective that just discussed what was happening and what the characters did. So it was also very succinctly written, like a folktale often is, in describing the setting and the world and what happens to the characters as opposed to how the characters feel, which I really enjoyed. And I loved seeing how all the characters progressed and how they aged. And it's a very short book, so it was quite fun to read. But it is safe to say I really recommend this book, and I'm going to have to give it a second read. Like, I'm probably going to read it next year again, just because I feel like there's so many layers that I need to still read, and then I'll get it from a second read, not just from my first read. And I love how it starts and ends on the same thing, so it's as if this generation came full circle, which was just so good. Like, I really loved it. And The Observer, yeah, The Observer said it quite well. They said, the rare thing, genuinely unique. It was genuinely unique, and I loved it. Then we have Descendants of the Crane with a very pretty cover, which was by Joan He, and I loved it, but I also hated it. And I enjoyed it, but I also despised it. So this follows, it's a standalone, which is probably why I disliked it so much, is because this follows a young woman who's the princess, who becomes queen because her father dies, and she opens up an investigation into his murder because she believes he was murdered. And this causes a domino effect and ultimately causes her to become unstable in her position and in this world. So there's a lot of political layers, there's a lot of intrigue, there's a lot of like war and stuff like that, and I feel the book was just too short to go into in depth in all of these different layers and all of these different discussions. So the premise and the idea behind this book was like perfect, but I feel like it should have been at least a trilogy, and the ending was left so open even though it's finished. Like, I went and specifically went and read multiple articles by the author to see if there's a possibility for other ones, and she said no, this character is finished for her, which I respect, but I also feel like it needs a few tying off ends, as if this has just been left at a loose end that needs to be finished off, because now it implies and it told you about what's the possibility to come and what still needs to happen. It's just not going to be discussed or completed, which really pisses me off and makes me want to angry read it again or just throw the book across the room, but I wouldn't. But yes, and I enjoyed how diverse the characters were and how they were shaped and how they were portrayed, but I feel as if this was just too short to do the book justice, and that there needs to be more to actually do the story and this world and these characters proper justice. Then, lastly, of physical copies that I read 84 Charing Cross Road and The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street by Helen Hamf. And this is kind of an autobiographical non-fiction which is written in letters because this woman, Helen Hamf, so it's an autobiography, exchanged letters with the booksellers in 84 Charing Cross Road for 20 years. And it was beautiful. It had me crying at the end, and it was a quick read. I sat and finished it in 2 hours, but it was so worth it. And it's written completely in letters, and it's just a compilation of the letters that she wrote and that she got in return about the books that she wanted. And as a person, she sounds fascinating, exciting, funny, and just like a darling. And pretty much throughout this book, she wanted to go to London each time, but to go visit everyone there, but she just could not. And then after publishing 84 Charing Cross Road, she was finally able to go to London, and that is where The Duchess of Bloomsbury Street comes in, because that is her little diary of her trip to London, which I also love because she just writes in such an honest, lovely, friendly manner that just has you feeling like she could be a very good friend of yours, if that makes sense. So I absolutely adored it. It was 5 out of 5 stars, and I couldn't recommend it more. It is quite an old book in the sense that it has been around for quite some time, but I feel that it can satisfy the wanderlust and need or desire of many generations to connect with people from another part in the world. And so yeah, 5 out of 5 stars. I really loved it, and I really loved the fact that it was written in letters only, or that it was a true story and real letters, not a made up letters, but that these were the real letters that Helen Hamf wrote to the people living in London and working at 84 Charing Cross Road. Then I read one other book, and this was an ARC sent to me by the publisher, or not the publisher, by the author / Readsy, because this is a self-published book, and it is Chicago May by Harry Duffin. And I enjoyed it. It was fine. Like, I'll put it up here. But it was okay. Like, I enjoyed it in the sense that it was a bit of an adventure with high stakes heists and stuff like that, but I just felt like it was too smooth, if that makes sense. Like, there was never any moment that I actually was afraid for the character while she was doing these. She was swindling people out of their money, and it follows a 16-year-old Irish girl who arrives in New York after escaping her abusive father, and how she gets entangled with this mobster is maybe a better word to use, but this guy, and she goes and swindles rich people out of their money in the 1920s. So it's very high living, quite an adventure, but the character as a whole was a bit too perfect for me. She didn't really have any flaws. She was beautiful, she was smart, she was funny, you know, the character didn't really feel like it had any substance. And then whenever a heist was taking place, I always felt like, they're gonna be fine in the end, if that makes sense. So it was good. It wasn't bad, it wasn't great. It was like, a solid 2.5, maybe 3. 2.5 probably, because that's like 50%. It was what it was. But yeah, and that is the books that I read this month. Quite a difference in the books that I hold and the books that I actually read. I didn't read a lot this month because it was exam month and the last month of this semester. But yes, thank you for watching, and I hope you found a book that you would be interested in reading, or that you found a book that you wanted to read and decided against it, or anything. Thank you for sticking around with this super long video, and I hope to see you again. Bye!